Welcome. This is a conversation, and you're invited to be a part of this conversation. In the studio, we have Katie Gillespie. Katie is going to share with us um, a very different perspective. I don't know if this is on your resume or whatever, but talk to us about being a stand-up comic.
Yeah, it's not something that I expected to be involved in. I have always been extremely introverted and was painfully shy.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I would try it one time just to prove to myself that I could do it. And I did. I don't remember much about it at all because I was so nervous. But I did it. And then I just kind of kept going. And now it's just a fun hobby. And I think, for someone who is pretty shy, it's kind of a safe way to practice kind of taking up more space and actively asking for attention.
Mm-hmm.
And then that has translated a lot to my life kind of off stage as well.
Mm-hmm.
I feel a lot more confident and able to communicate in work meetings and things like that than I was before I started doing stand-up.
Yeah. So you've been doing stand-up for how long now?
On and off for about 4 years.
Okay.
Yep.
But you're doing a big project now, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Tina Frimmel and I, who's a stand-up comedian who grew up in Middlebury, we started a show called Casual Friday Live, which is at the Marquee Theater in Middlebury.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of different than traditional stand-up shows. We invite 3 stand-up comedians from Vermont to come, and they'll do stand-up sets, but the format is really more of like a late night talk show. Mm-hmm. So after they do a stand-up set, we'll invite them to sit down with us and we'll have a conversation much like this.
Okay.
And then we also play sort of games that involve the audience, and so it's been really fun.
Good. That's not. Tell me about your partner who is going to be here today, but got caught in traffic and.
Tina's going to be famous one day. I feel very confident in saying that.
We're going to know her when, right?
Yeah. I think stand-up comedy is something she wants to pursue professionally, and she's just one of those people that when you see her perform, she just has this quality that you're like, oh yeah, she's got it. So yeah, she grew up in Middlebury. I think that her mom is involved with the Town Hall Theater, so she's always been very involved with kind of drama, theater, creative work. She has a degree in digital arts. And she just started doing stand-up about a year ago. She took a class at the Vermont Comedy Club up in Burlington. But she's just really funny. I've never seen her bomb. She just wows every time she performs. So
great.
She's really great. Yeah.
And this is now this show will be both live for a while, and then it'll be on the website. So when it's on the website, all these events are in the past. But this will be live this coming Friday, which will be what date is that?
November 17th.
November 17th.
Yep.
Okay.
At 8 p.m.
So that those of you who see this and enter into this conversation now can come.
And we hope that you will.
And you're going to do this every month?
Yep, we're going to do it monthly. Unfortunately, the date changes. We don't have a consistent third Friday of every month.
Right.
But so we've got another show planned for December 8th. And then January 12th.
Okay.
Yep.
December 8th and January 12th.
Yep.
Okay. So, what's it like to do comedy? When we do storytelling, there are a number of people who just respond to that very quickly, and then we have a number of people who say, "I don't have a story," and but often, and I say to them, "Well, come listen, because you need a listener before you have a story, because if you don't have someone to listen, you don't have a."
Yeah.
You have a story like the tree in the woods that falls and nobody hears it and knows it's there.
Yep.
But usually before the time is out, that person will tell a story because they'll discover a story.
Yep.
So is that the same way with stand-up comedy?
I think it's pretty similar. I think that for me, doing comedy has changed how I view the world. So now I always view everything with this sort of lens of looking for the humor in it. And I mean, which is a great way to to live, to always look for the humor in things. So I am always, jotting things down in my phone that make me laugh that, I might mine for material later. So I think, yeah, it's similar in that you have to kind of be an observer of humor in the world, which we all are. It's just sort of being conscious of that. And then I find the things that I sometimes least want to talk about are the things that seem to be funniest, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And then, I think comedy has a way of, and storytelling does too, of taking things that we think are unique to us, but making it this shared experience. And there's something really powerful about when that happens on stage.
Can you give us an example of something where that had happened to you?
Yeah, so I have a couple of jokes about my father passed away almost 4 years ago, and so that was a very hard experience for me, and it was something I didn't want to talk about. And it's kind of a taboo subject in day-to-day conversation to talk about death and dying. We kind of shy away from that. But there's so many things about funerals and death and dying that actually are funny. And so, an example, one of my favorite jokes, I say that the only thing my dad left me when he died was one of the family cemetery plots, and I don't want to be buried, but I'm a landowner now. And so things like that. And
that's good.
The reactions I get to jokes like that about the things that I least sort of want to talk about have been very positive, and then it is sort of healing to me as well. Yeah.
Do you find that people talk to you about that, some joke that you're told, and there's an impact that you didn't expect and they didn't expect?
Yeah, when about 6 months after my dad died is when I really started to do comedy about that, and I had a 10-minute set that was just stuff about death and dying and my dad. And when I would perform that set, I would have people come up to me afterwards and say, "Oh, I lost my parent too. Like, thank you so much for talking about that." And so that meant a lot to me, and that felt really good. I don't do that set together, or haven't in a long time, but I do some of those jokes still.
So there's a language there, a set. What is a set?
A set is when you're booked on a show, for 5 or 10 minutes, all of your jokes. So we call that a set.
Okay.
Yep.
All of your jokes.
Yep.
In other words, if it goes any longer than that, you're going to stand up there and not.
You're in trouble. You won't get booked again on that show, probably.
Yeah.
So it depends on the show. Sometimes people are a little looser with the timing, but you'll often have a light kind of towards the end of your set, so maybe at 9 minutes. And then when the light goes off, you know that you're done. And if you go over, you're taking time from everyone else. And so other people on the show aren't going to be super happy with you.
No, okay. How not to win friends and influence people
Yep.
to go over.
Yep.
Do you, when you think about comedy, and and you have a joke, does that become part of a story? How does story fit into stand-up comedy?
I would say that my material is very based on story. So, shorter segments with jokes added in, but I would say almost all of my material is kind of storytelling-like. And that's very personal. And my brain just doesn't work in that one-liner kind of way, which is, I really enjoy comedians who can do that, but that's not my personal style.
Okay, so you're not, the one-liner was an interesting, those are obviously lines that have been collected and honed and they're available to somebody
Yep.
because they're but yours, you say it's connected to a story, comes out of
Yeah.
a story.
Yeah, I would say so, very much. I can give you an example,
Sure.
which I think
Oh, yeah.
is unique to me, but the experience itself is relatable. So I had been dating someone, and we had been on a few dates, and then he just disappeared. And I don't know if you know about this phenomenon, but it's called ghosting.
No, I didn't know about that, but
I'm glad that you
I can
don't,
see it.
but they just disappear. But, in Vermont, it's very small.
Mm-hmm.
So in the back of my mind, I knew I was probably going to see this guy again. And I think everyone kind of has that experience, right? Where you want to see this former flame when you're at your best. You want to be looking great and kind of show them what they're missing. And so I, of course, saw this guy again, but my experience was not like that. I was sitting in my car and I was eating. I was peeling and eating hard-boiled eggs, which is not
Okay.
not how I dreamed.
That in itself is a great thing to think about.
Yep, which is not how I saw that experience going. So that was something that I then turned into a joke, which is, personal to me, but I think relatable enough because we all have those experiences of how we hoped something would have gone and
it
it
didn't
not
go
going
that
that way. Yeah.
Like a cracked egg.
Yeah.
So do you find that that as you go along in terms of stand-up comedy, do you find that other people are encouraged by that, and do they talk to you?
I think other people are encouraged, especially, people who know me personally, because I think, and I hope this is how it comes off, if I can do it, anyone can do it. And I think that that's absolutely true. And not that it won't be a little bit uncomfortable, perhaps, but I think it's like with anything, if you stick with it, and anyone can do it. So I think that I find close friends who have seen me do comedy, I'll notice ripples in terms of them like, hey, you might be able to use this on stage, or this funny thing happened to me. And so even if they don't do it, I kind of like the thought of more people looking at life through that lens of looking for the humor.
Yeah, I like the image of the lens. Is that a kind of a common image, or is that your perspective?
Yeah, that's my perspective, but I think the concept is really common. All the stand-up comedians that I know will carry little notebooks and are, constantly jotting down ideas for later of things that might work or might not. So I think that looking for the humor and everything is very common, but the lens concept is just kind of how I think of it.
Yeah. And how does all that fit with research?
That's a good question. I think it doesn't really. I actually keep my personal hobby of stand-up comedy and my professional life totally separate. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
But I guess it's research of a type, right? It's research on the human experience and looking, pulling out things to share.
If a person said to you, I can't tell a joke, how would you help them?
Well, I think that's false because we all tell jokes to one another. Like, we all make people in our day-to-day life laugh. So I think it's about thinking carefully about what makes you laugh and why. And when you make someone that you know laugh, what is it about that? And sort of just pulling from those examples of you're doing it. You already are doing it, but just kind of analyzing them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are they willing to enter into that kind of conversation, or is that just not something you talk about, but something you observe? And
I think it's something that I observe. I think for most people, it's okay, I can see myself doing that, but it's the on stage in front of people, what if no one laughs part. And for me, it's not pleasant when it happens, for sure, but I think the best advice that I ever got was, at the end of the day, it's 5 to 20 minutes of your life. And as good as you are, as bad as you are, most people are probably not going to remember it. And it sounds bleak.
Is that not encouraging?
It sounds bleak in a way, but it's also freeing, right?
Yeah,
because
that's right.
it makes you realize how it doesn't really matter. If no one laughs,
If
so
you think
what?
you fell on your face and then you say, okay, well, that really didn't happen.
Or it's not really
it
that
happened
meaningful.
for me, but it wasn't, and maybe nobody else noticed.
Yeah,
you
or
know?
cares.
Or
They're not
cares.
going to think about it again. And for me, that concept was freeing enough to keep doing it. But I can see how for a lot of people, it's not fun to just stand up there in silence. I mean, it can be tough.
The other side is, do you get folks who just talk and don't know how to stop?
Yeah.
And therefore they just talk on and on and on and on and on, and you wish you're saying to yourself, where's the period? There's got to be a period or someplace.
Yeah, I think that's a tendency I've noticed in myself too, especially with my material being sort of storytelling-like or based on personal stories. And so the thing about comedy is that you do have to, I think, to get good, you have to have a level of self-awareness. So I think people who are really good spend a lot of time watching their sets or listening to them. I audio record a lot of mine, and it helps you figure out what you can just cut. And sometimes it's not the things that you think. On stage, your perception can be different. Like the things that I think got a good response, sometimes when I listen to it back, I'm like, oh, actually that didn't go over that well. So how can I cut that down? Oftentimes it's cutting out the extra, which is challenging. Yeah.
It is. You
Yeah.
know, how much do you really need to set that up?
Yep.
And will it set it up? I remember a storytelling experience where a person felt they had to tell us all the details
Yep.
about getting to this, and I thought they're never going to find their story.
Yep.
And then they did. They did for about a minute. They found the story, and then they wanted to tell all the details afterwards. And I thought, well, at least you found your story for a minute.
Yeah, I feel like the folks that start with, and I don't know if this is relevant to the story.
Right.
If you find yourself saying that, it's not.
Yeah,
It isn't. Cut it out.
So you're working towards being a counselor.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
And how that fits in comedy and how it fits with storytelling?
Yeah, I think for me, doing stand-up has been, I hate when people say it's a form of therapy because I don't think that's true, but I think it's been a healing process, both in terms of kind of overcoming shyness and then also working through grief. So I think we look at things like art therapy, people painting to work through emotions and kind of access those things that we can't always with words. But it's less common to sort of look at, things like improv comedy or storytelling or stand-up. But I think those can have that same sort of experience. And so I'm interested in possibly offering that, as a workshop to clients, because I think it gives you power when you can craft the story yourself, and instead of thinking about something that happened to you, kind of transforming it and giving it your own voice. I think that's really powerful. So I'm interested in sort of offering that as an option for folks who might be working through something. But I think my experience as a hospice volunteer, and then also I worked with a group called the Dinner Party for a little while.
I don't know about that.
So it's a group for people in their 20s and 30s who have lost someone significant in their life, and they get together and just have potluck dinners. And there's no one is a trained therapist. It's very informal, and there's no structure. So the host opens up their home, and people come and bring food, and then the experience goes as it does. And for me, I found that as an attendee to just be transformative. I was the first among my friend group to lose a parent, and so I didn't really feel like I could talk about that experience very much in my daily life. And being with this group of people who just automatically got it was really important to me. And so when I moved to Vermont, I started a table here in Middlebury, and then I had a co-host in Burlington, so we would switch back and forth between Middlebury and Burlington. And so I started thinking about how my hobbies, hospice volunteering and running this informal grief support group could also be something that I did full time. And so that's what I'm really interested in pursuing.
And you're steadily working at courses and
Yep.
activities and
Yep.
all the requirements.
Yep.
And that's good. That's really
Yep.
good. That's really good. That's special. In therapy, are you aware that many therapists do connect with humor? Or is that something, because our tendency to think is therapy is very serious all the time and not connected to humor.
Yep.
So I don't know what I'm asking, but is there a...
I think it depends.
What do you think?
I think it depends on the clients. I think some people are just what you said, looking for this like sort of serious experience, and I think you have to respect that when that's what they want. But I think for a lot of people, it helps lighten these things that are really heavy and difficult to think about. So I think it's actually has a really important role when used appropriately.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Excuse me. That cough is. What have we missed that you would like to talk about in terms of your experiences?
Well, I think if there's anyone who's thinking about trying stand-up comedy, I would just encourage you to do it and know that it will be scary, probably that first time, but I truly think that anyone can do it, and I think there's important lessons in it.
And where would they do it? In front of their mirror, or
they could, or I think to get the full experience,
get up on stage.
Get up on stage. Go to an open mic. There is an open mic at the Marquee Theater, which is a mixed open mic for music and poetry and things like that. But there are a lot of open mics up in Burlington area. And so that's a really great sort of safe space to try things out because it's other people trying out new material as well.
Right.
So there'll be an audience, but it's an audience that's understanding that this is new material.
Be sympathetic, right?
Yeah.
Although there might
supportive.
be some hecklers out there. We cannot guarantee, right?
You can't guarantee it, but I guess knock on wood, in 4 years of doing stand-up comedy, I've never been heckled.
Okay.
And I hope that continues. But
yeah. You don't think that would be a fun experience?
No.
No.
It's not one that I look forward to, though I'm sure it will happen at some point.
Yeah.
I think part of the reason I gravitate towards stand-up is because I'm such a planner, and so for stand-up, that works really well because I plan out all my material ahead of time, and more or less, I have control over the experience and how it goes. And so a heckler, I think, would really throw me off. But the people who are really good and kind of able to work with that are so impressive to me, and I enjoy seeing how professional comedians handle that.
Is there a way for comedy to be included in a therapeutic circle?
I think absolutely, and it is starting to happen. So Second City, which is in Chicago, they actually have improv classes specifically for people with anxiety, and so it is used as treatment. So I think there's absolutely a way, and I think you could even do that with stand-up. I think you could have a workshop for people who have been through a traumatic experience or a major loss. And
do you see that in your future?
I do. I hope so.
Okay.
I hope so. Yeah.
A vision. Yeah,
Yep.
that's great.
Yep.
Yeah, I could see you doing that. That
Thank
would
you.
be great. Yeah, and then people would come with an expectation.
Yep.
I've done lots of funerals in my day.
Right.
Have conducted those,
Yep.
and what is always interesting is after the service, when there's food and so forth,
Yep.
the stories that get told, and now in recent years, some services have incorporated people telling stories or doing remembrances.
Yep.
Um, and as one person said, sitting to me, he said, I never realized that he was such an interesting person. And I thought, that's it, you never, but people started to tell the stories, and the laughter started to come, and it's always good when laughter comes.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, it takes what's isolating and painful and makes it suddenly a shared communal experience, and there's healing in that.
It's not always good when some people tell the wrong kind of...
Right.
How do you choose the story? I guess the wrong kind of story, that ends
Right.
up putting the person down,
Yep.
But of course, once people get started, you don't have any control. There's
To
no
cut them
hook.
off,
You
yeah.
don't have any.
Yeah, you can't cut the mic.
They don't do the hook in stand-up comedy.
They
do they?
don't do the hook, but I have actually seen one comedian, they turned the mic off and kicked them off stage
Okay.
because they were telling, offensive, clearly
So
intentionally
there is
offensive
a
jokes.
sense of there might be a sense of control
Yeah.
in terms of what the standards would be.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think certainly that's always a thing with comedy, right? Is there a line between what you can joke about and what's inappropriate to joke about? But for me, that line seems to be if you're a part of the group, so I lost my dad. So I think when I talk about it it's from personal experience. And so I sort of have that, not right, but sort of that license to joke about this thing that happened to me. Whereas it can come off, in my opinion, as insensitive if someone who's not part of that group sort of makes fun of it.
Right.
But I think that's always a line that comedy and comedians push.
Well, it's storytelling,
Right.
It's, of course, too, is
Yep.
what's appropriate and what's not. And
Yep.
there's so much in life that calls for laughter. And it's amazing when you can help people find that.
Yep.
And or when and so sometimes, well, you don't help them. All of a sudden, there have been people who've told stories that are just incredibly funny, and you'd never expect it to come out of their mouth.
Yeah.
You just never would expect it at all. But it was, as you said, it was them doing this.
Yep.
It was it was part of something that they owned and respected, and because they respected the person that was there.
Yep.
Yeah. So you didn't have being a stand-up comic on your life ambitions.
Oh,
right?
no. It's not something I ever thought I would do in a million years. Yeah.
So where is it now in terms of your perspective?
I think it's something I always want to be a part of my life. I think having that sort of creative outlet has been really important for me. But I don't want to be a professional stand-up comedian.
Okay.
That's not what I want to do full time. I mean, if someone came to me and said, "Here, you can have a Netflix special," sure, I would take it.
Yes, of course.
But it's not something that I plan to pursue beyond the hobby sort of level. But I perform pretty regularly up in Burlington and now here in Middlebury. So it's something I plan to continue with and always keep a part of my life. Yeah.
Thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me.
Very helpful. Thank you, folks. Do come and be part of the story, become part of the comedy, enjoy the laughter. You have story to tell, you have jokes to tell, you have life to be thankful for.